tell me why you've been able to help me overcome everything, and really why you'd be able to help anybody overcome anything, no matter what it is. Drugs, alcohol, sex, spending, gambling.
Well, you've lost 60 pounds.
I have,
right.
With your help.
And what else? What else have you overcome?
I've overcome a dependence and addiction on alcohol, on drugs, on men, love, sex, and that obsession, which drove my every waking thought, minute, and action. Compulsive overspending, gambling, cigarettes, caffeine, sugar. And I'm sure the list goes on, but we'll stop there just so I can have your answer, because I'm excited about your answer.
Well, you're also making a lot more money than you ever made before.
I am. I doubled my income. I almost tripled it after working with you for less than a year, about 6-8 months.
Right. So
incredible. In an entirely different profession, mind you.
So that goes to show you see that there's many, many symptoms of this condition.
True.
But there's only one problem. There's only one problem, and the problem is deep within. And it manifests itself in many, 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 many different symptoms. Because, but at the same time, if you address the real problems, see, most people who are treating addictions or are treating these various and sundry problems are treating the symptoms. Whereas if we go directly to the problem, address the problem, and get to the solution, then all the symptoms will clear up, and that's what you've experienced. And so that's the process. It's not a, it's just the world is treating symptoms.
So true.
And
the way you've taught it to me. Sorry,
it's just that you can treat symptoms forever, and all you get is more symptoms.
It's so true.
Right?
So true.
It's like changing deck. You've heard it said like changing deck chairs on the Titanic.
It's true.
It doesn't matter.
That was totally my experience.
If you're flying first class in a Silver Bullet, or you flying back in the coach, you still go. If it goes down, you go down.
That's very true. It's very true.
It's all about we got to become a new person. The person I was would always have the problems I had.
Yeah.
And that person has to die. It has to cease to exist. The ego, it's the dying of the self.
Yeah.
And the more we let that go, the more we get over the selfishness and the self-centeredness and the self-consciousness and the self-pity and self-delusion and all that type of stuff, the more we get to a place where we can be free and we can have a good life. And not only that, but we can be of service and usefulness to God and to other people.
Which is the real benefit and payoff, because that feels the best. I have to say, when I first heard you talk about the dying of the self, I got really overwhelmed, mostly because I didn't understand what that meant. But what it has come to mean for me is actually it's brought me a great amount of relief and freedom. Because if I liked the person that I was and wanted to continue being the person that I was, I wouldn't have been doing everything in my power to try to destroy the person I was. I'm very lucky to be alive today doing the things that I was before. Really self-destructive, parasuicidal behavior, and as someone on the outside looking in, they'd be able to clearly see that I hated myself, I hated my life, not because of anyone around me or anything that had been done to me, which you taught me as well. I can't be a self-pitying victim for the rest of my life and expect to have good things come to me. But the fact of the matter was, I didn't like my life, and so the dying of the self, though it sounded very big and overwhelming, it was exactly what I needed. And I had never heard it before, and it has actually turned out to be the most beautiful process. And the more surrender, you've also taught me something wonderful about the truth about God, and the wonderful thing is I came to you with a very rich, or so I thought, rich spiritual background, and I came to you and I had my doctorate already, big bad therapist, specialist in eating disorders and addictions. And I was very thankful. Unfortunately, I thought I knew so much because it didn't allow me to really enjoy and have all of your wisdom all at once, because I thought I knew so much. But once I got over myself a little bit and was able to kind of take in the stuff that you were talking about, I saw that really I knew so little, and especially about the spiritual stuff. And I was just amazed, because I knew intellectually that God was supposed to be good, and God wanted to give me good, but I could not comprehend that because I was hurting myself, and I was living in such misery and pain, and anything I touched, instead of turning to gold, it turned to you-know-what. So I couldn't make peace with the two, and you were the only one that could show me how to actually manifest the good in my life that I hoped that God was, but in my heart, I didn't know that God was, I knew God was good in my head, but I couldn't make it happen in my heart to manifest it in my life. And that's one of the greatest gifts He's shown me, and that's why I've had the freedom I have, and the money that I have, and the body that I have, and the good feeling in my heart, and the peace and everything that the whole world is searching for.
Right. Well, you've been receptive to the gifts, and that's what this whole process is about. Because the universe is always giving us all as much good as we're capable of accepting. But when we think we know it all, then there's no hope of learning anything. Yeah. And I was in the same place. That's the nature of this condition. I knew everything about everything. I was dying, but I knew everything about everything. And so, you know, and that's the nature of the condition, is literally believing that our reasoning is sound.
Total insanity.
It's complete insanity, because it's just, you know, as long as I was convinced that my line of reasoning was correct, then I was right and other folks were wrong, so there was no way I could learn anything.
Yeah.
And this process for me is about I have to become a student, an eager student. Yeah. I need to be teachable, and in that process, then I can learn. And the whole process is coming, because the important thing to understand about God and spirit and all that, no person is any closer to it than anyone else. It's closer to us than our hands and our feet. It's closer to us than our skin. It's closer to us than our breath. Yeah. But it's just that if we perceive ourselves to be separate from it, then we will act as if we're separate from it. We will feel as if we're separate from it. So for all intents and purposes, we're separate, even though in reality we can't be separate.
And it makes sense, because I felt so lonely my whole life.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God! And no matter how many people I had around, there was just that deep. No matter how many drinks I had, how many joints I smoked, didn't matter. I still felt lonely and disconnected. I tried.
So did I. But that's the important thing is the more we get real. See, this process is not about getting good. It's about getting real.
Yeah.
And the more we get real, then the more we get in touch. You know, you get to see me warts and all, so to speak, and then consequently, there's hope of overcoming.
I was terrified if I actually showed you the real me, that you wouldn't love me. That was my fear my whole life, and actually, to the contrary, the more I just allowed my true self to come out, even the good, the ugly and the nasty, you were so open and receptive to that, because you actually showed me a way to be able to come out of that and transform. But until you gave me enough love and encouragement and support and education to be able to see those things and face them and let them out in your presence, in the presence of another human being, and admit it to myself and to you, I had no hope. I was going to continue being the person I was.
The important thing to understand is there's nothing that can't be overcome if we're willing, by God's loving grace, and with my help, if a person is willing to face it honestly. And it's really important to understand that only God can heal you, and only you can let Him. Yeah. And I'm basically here to help you get yourself out of the way, so that you can let God heal you. Yeah. So that's the way the process works. And you know, it's always an ongoing process, and we always, you know, there's always more and more and more refining to do, and you know, the more we get ourselves out of the way, the more good Spirit can give us, and so, you know, it's always giving us as much good as we're capable of accepting. So it's always important to understand that this is a limitless opportunity. Yeah. Just like it's a limitless illness. Yeah. There's no limits to where it can take you or anyone. There's no limits to how far down a person can go. There's no limits to how far one can overcome, and there's no limits to the good that one can have in one's life if they're able and willing to go forward. You know, I'm very grateful to have been given a way out, and I'm so happy to share it with anyone and everyone who is interested. So this is what I'm about.